Hello. I'm going to talk to you now about Chapter 8, which has to do with safety management. At the beginning of Chapter 8, there is a chart, Table 8-1. I just wanted to point out to you the leading causes of childhood death due to unintentional injury. And our textbook points out that the terms unintentional injury is also known as accidents. Our textbook says that the terms unintentional injury has replaced the term accident when referring to injuries sustained by children. Childhood injuries happen most often due to environmental hazards, lack of appropriate planning, lack of adult supervision, and the immature development of children. Infants and toddlers are at the highest risk for sustaining life-threatening injuries and medical emergencies due to their curiosity, impulsiveness, and immature development. Older children continue to explore their environments. However, they lacked advanced motor skills, experience, and the ability to anticipate the consequences of their behavior. Adults, we need to be aware of children's developmental abilities and their behavioral characteristics in order to protect them from environmental hazards, etc. If you will take a look at Table 8-2 on pages 206 and 207, it's a two-pager, but it is a very good table to refer to. Developmental characteristics of children, ages birth through 12, I don't know if I said that already. What types of hazards, there are for those children. What are the preventative measures to prevent the child from getting hurt by that hazard? Table 8-3 is a small one at the bottom of 208. Conditions that contribute to unintentional injury. Take a look at that one, please. Okay, as we move on in Chapter 8, we're going to continue to talk about prevention of unintentional injury, or risk management measures. Our textbook talks about implementing risk management measures. Okay, to start with, advanced planning is needed. Establishment of safety policies and guidelines. If you'll look at the checklist 8-1 on page 210, there are some guidelines there for the safe use of play equipment. And I'm just going to say this right quick. You all will be looking at playgrounds. Each of you will go to one playground, and you get to choose it. It can be at a child care center. It can be a public playground. Find something that's in your neighborhood, that's close by. It needs to be, it could be a park, a public park. It needs to be a playground that children, I'm not talking about a playground in somebody's yard, but you're going to be using a checklist, which I will give you, and you will be looking at the playground as a whole and determining if the playground is safe, if it's properly maintained, etc. Based on that checklist, we will be looking at our rules for the child care learning centers and what it says about playgrounds more specifically. All of that information is coming up, but I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. That's why I want you to be looking at anything in these chapters that has to do specifically with playgrounds, because that is our safety project. Back to, okay, I was going over how to prevent unintentional injuries or risk management measures, and I already said two of them, but I'm going to say them again. Advanced planning, establishment of safety policies and guidelines, Quality supervision, safety education, both for the teachers and staff members, the people that work with the children, as well as the children themselves. The children need to be taught how to safely play on the play equipment, for example. They need to be taught how to safely handle specific items in the classroom. We will be talking about the implementation of safety practices. Now, on pages 214 and 215, there's some information about choking hazard prevention. Now, back on our assignment 1, as we discussed many times, the rules for child care learning centers, you all had a question about choking hazards. In my thinking, I meant, and I did not clarify it, so I did not count off. I was thinking about food. But some of you pointed out the regulations for toys and equipment, so I gave you credit for that. Well, on page 214, there is some guidelines there in the textbook, and there's even a graphic there, figure 8-1, that more specifically talks about dealing with choking hazard prevention with toys and other equipment. There's a checklist at the bottom of that page. It's called Checklist 8-3. It's in the green box. And the top of page 215, another green box, 8-4. Both of those are very good checklists. One of them has to do with the guidelines for selecting safe toys and play equipment, and then the other one has to do with appropriate toy choices. You guys need to get familiar with these things. I mean, this is what you're going to be seeing in a early childhood classroom. Again, let me go back to the prevention of unintentional injuries or risk management measures. Safety in the classroom, I just mentioned. No, I didn't. I did not mention that. I'm going to now. Safety in the classroom. Indoor safety. I did already mention table 8-4 on page. No, I didn't. I've got it numbered wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. Like I said, there's so many tables and graphics and checklists in these two chapters that are very good. That's why I keep pointing them out to you. I want to be sure you read them and refer to them as you are doing activities, you know, in the class as we do activities that are related to safety. But table 8-4 is actually a yellow box on 217 and 218 is an infant equipment safety checklist. And then it goes on, we've got a safe use of an electrical appliance. That's on 219, 8-5. It's at the bottom. It's a green box. Safe use of art materials. Page 220, 8-6 is another green box. Now, we talked about environmental hazards. Well, there you go. Art materials can become environmental hazards if a child puts a paint in his or her mouth. There's your environmental hazard. So please pay attention to those. We go on through the text. It talks about safety on field trips. And when we looked at our rules, there was several guidelines. We specifically pointed out there was a question on the rules assignment 1, about field trips. I think it had to do with the number of adults, the ratio of adults to children. But very important information about field trips there. It talks about on down pets in the classroom, and how to safely deal with pets. Like for instance, I've had fish in the classroom before. I tried one time to have a hamster. It didn't live very long, but I don't think it was it wasn't anything to do with the children. It just didn't live very long. Anyway, it does talk about possible, like turtles, fish, other reptiles. I kind of stuck with fish because the fish, I don't know, it wasn't very difficult to maintain the fish. Although I will say after a while I did get tired of taking care of them. So I did that for several years though. I did deal with it, and we enjoyed it. The kids enjoyed looking at the fish, and it's a good thing, but it is an extra duty for you as a teacher to deal with them. Okay, we go on. Personal safety practices for the home visitor. That is if you have to do home visits, I believe. And unless you are in a Head Start type program, or maybe some pre-K programs, I'm not sure. If the pre-K program is in with Head Start, you may have to do home visits. I did when I worked in the program in Franklin County, but I was in a classroom that was a Head Start pre-K partnership classroom. So there is some personal safety discussed there. Then a very important thing for you guys as future early childhood educators, safety and legal matters. If you don't follow certain guidelines, you could be liable. You could be negligent. That's a good topic to investigate, read more about, because you never know. Okay, the last thing, well, not the very last thing, there is an figure 8.2 on 224 is an individual injury report form, and I think that's one of those forms that we've got to be able to recognize as a part of our course competencies is the injury report form. And we need to find what the injury report form that's in the Georgia Decal website, because that's the one that's going to pertain to you all if you teach, definitely if you teach in the state of Georgia. But there's an example of one in the textbook. Okay, the last part of Chapter 8 talks about dealing with emergencies and disaster preparedness. Planning for these things, that's important for teachers to plan emergency and disaster preparedness planning. Even we've had to do that. This summer I had to watch some videos that was a part of the emergency and disaster planning for North Georgia Technical College, as far as what we had to know as instructors and staff. Preparing for the action. If you'll look at Teacher Checklist 8.8, or 8-8, excuse me, on page 226, and then we've got tables 8-5 and 8-6 on 227. These are good things to refer to. We've got an emergency supply kit checklist, evacuation kits, and emergency food supplies. These are all things that you have to think about if you're to prepare for emergencies and disasters. One of the trainings that we've got coming up is an active shooter training. I hate to think about the possibility of that happening, but as you all well know, it happens. So we have to be prepared for it as instructors and teachers. All right, as I go on, we need to practice and revise our plans, and finally, help children cope after disasters or emergencies. Table 8-7 on page 228 is a list of strategies to help children cope after a disaster or an emergency. That's it, folks. There's a lot of information, way more than I've discussed in the lecture here. Please read carefully through Chapter 7 and 8. You have a good day, night, whatever time it is that you're watching this video, and I'll see you in class.